of the same in the world. But that aside, it is equally the fourth largest island in the world. And their wildlife, 90% of the wildlife they have can only be found in that country. So if you are a lover of wildlife, once you leave Madagascar, you'll never see that anywhere else. But the proverb this morning, advice is a stranger. If he's welcomed, he stays for the night. If not, he leaves the same day. How would you interpret it?
Well, thank you, Dennis. I do believe when you are advising, you need to be as objective as you can. And if that advice is not fairly taken, then maybe whatever you are advising may not be taken in. So it's not necessarily to leave, but to ensure that you provide a balanced advisory that at the end of the day will be able to result to tangible results, positive result with impact. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well said.
Well said.
Yeah.
Even as we then get into this conversation this hour, then to then be able to look at what it means for cost of electricity and why that seems to be going up all the time. We can start with that.
Thank you, Du, for the question, and thank you again for having me. On behalf of EPRA, we are grateful. The cost of electricity is one that is important to citizens because it powers homes and also to industries. Manufacturing sector depends on it, and that's why it's always important to ensure that the cost of electricity that is passed to consumers is cost reflective. You have to ensure that the costs that are built into it are prudent. And it's not like the cost of electricity has been going up. The last tariff review for Kenya was done in the year 2023. And at that point, of course, when you look at what Kenyans were buying, the cost of maybe 10 units was about 200 shillings and 16. That was the cost of 10 units. We approved the tariff. Today, actually, that tariff is lower. What we are paying between now and 2023 today is lower. But I think what has happened in the last 1 month, I think the forex adjustment, because there has not been any increase in the non-fuel and charge rate, was that the forex adjustment increased slightly by almost 73 cents. And that is why maybe when consumers look at the bill of last month compared to what they are paying now this month, there is a slight increase, but very slight increase. But the reason is that, of course, Kenya Power, had a loan that was due. And this loan is paid the month of December and June. And the slight increase actually is as a result of high volume of transactions on Forex. Otherwise, the other fundamentals remained fairly constant.
One would ask the question then, are they right or are they mistaken to think that because of the loan that was due that we saw high bill rate because Kenya Power had to meet its obligation? So that means that was put there to help Kenya Power pay the debt.
Basically, and thank you, Dennis, for that question. The way electricity tariffs are set, because these are conversations that we may not even end here today, but we can now also have another time. When you look at the way the kilowatt that you consume in your house every day, it is coming after various investments have been done. There is what we call generation cost. Generation cost is where you're putting up a geothermal power plant, you're putting up a wind power plant or a thermal power plant or a solar plant in place so that then you can get the kilowatts. Then after the kilowatt has been generated, normally then it has to be transmitted to the load senders. For example, Lake Turkana Wind is 426 kilometers away from here. So the electrons have to actually travel almost 430 kilometers to get to a citizen who is in Nairobi. So there is a transmission cost that has to be paid for. Then, in addition to the transmission cost, there is distribution cost. Distribution cost is where you get the power now from the transmission system and you take it to the house. So we have various voltages. in Kenya, transmission lines are considered at 500 DC. That is the biggest line that we have. Then we have 400 kV and 220 and 132. Those are considered transmission lines. Then 66 kV, 11 kV, 33 kV are considered on distribution level. So, of course, now the voltage also determines. The investments have to be done. So when you look at the tariff, then that is paid, it actually ensures that you include the cost of generation, transmission, distribution. And then in addition to that, there is also the investments cost, because when you are buying electricity or when you are putting a power plant, you don't have your own money. You have to borrow money. And also you have to actually install capex. Like, for example, the wind plants, you see, your wind turbines, you have to actually have at some point design them for you and ship them to Kenya. So you have to pay for that capex. So then, so we are talking about payment of the capex, the return on investment, paying for the senior debt, like the debt for 20 years, 30 years that has to be paid for. And of course, then the adjustment that have to be done. And the reason why Forex, for example, is adjusted is because the investors do not have control of the macroeconomic environment. And that's why most of the investors who come to Kenya, they want to actually be adjusted for Forex and also for inflation, because that is those are fundamentals that they are not able to actually have control of. Yeah, because we can control our own inflation here, but we another person who is buying a turbine from another country may look at that as a risk, and they want to be actually cushioned for that. Yeah.
The cost of the power that Kenya is using at the moment, is it expensive compared to what it could be using in terms of another source? Geothermal versus solar, for example?
No, I think the cost that we are paying, I would say it is cost reflective, because it's cost reflective from how much are we buying it from. Geothermal power, for example, we have 1,000 megawatts of geothermal power in this country. But in terms of power generation, geothermal gives us about 45% of the power that we have. But then we get geothermal on average 7 shillings. So that is the average price of geothermal. But you consider the geothermals for Kenyan, geothermal private sector, about 7 shillings. Hydropower that we have, about 800 megawatts. But because of seasonalities, again, out of 800 megawatts, you are sure of getting about 550 in a year. And that comes at about 4 shillings. The reason why 4 shillings is because those dams were done many years ago, some during colonial period, during the first administration, second administration, fourth administration, and you find those dams have been paid off. And so the tariff is usually lower at 4 shillings, because the dams, and then dams belongs to some, like the 105 in Takwel, belongs to Kerio Valley Development Authority. The other dams in the Masinga Cascade, they belong to Talda. So Kenyan has, of course, has leased them, and now they are using power to generate them. Now, solar, we are getting solar. Of course, so the solar we are getting at 12 US cents. Solar costs have come down. So I think what is going to happen is that the next round of solar projects that are going to be signed and wind, they will be coming at a lower cost.
So my question was that, is what is being used significantly more expensive than what could be used than it is? Because if you're talking about 12 US cents, that's about a shilling. A little bit more than a shilling, compared to the 4 shillings for hydro and the 7 shillings for geothermal that you spoke about. So why is solar not being explored more? Because we're talking about 45% for hydro and another 55%? No, 45% geothermal
and 25%
hydro.
Yeah.
So the rest comes from other sources.
Yeah.
Whereas because solar cannot be counted on 100%, also because of infrastructure issues, it is cheaper. Is it being explored then as a replacement source because of its cost? Because I would imagine that if the going in cost is cheaper, then what we complain at the micro level then would be cheaper for Kenyans.
Yeah, maybe just a correction that when I talk about 12 US cents, that is like 15 shillings per kilowatt hour for solar. You know, those are the contracts that are there at the moment. So solar is still more expensive than hydro than geothermal.
Okay.
But what we are saying, future contracts that are going to be signed, because the cost of solar since the time we signed the contracts has come down by almost 60%.
Okay.
That benefit is going to be seen the next round of PPAs that KPLC will be signing, where they will be signing a cheaper cost. But I think coming to solar, and the wire solar, we cannot rely it on it 100%. A year has 8,760 hours. That's the number of hours in a year, 8760. Out of those 8760, when you look at a day, and a good solar day in Kenya is about 7 hours. So out of 24 hours, you have 7 hours of good solar. That is like 24% of the time. So when you look at the power plants that we have 210 megawatts of solar in this country, all the way from Garissa Solar, some in Uasin Gishu and Malindi Solar at the coast.
Yes.
So what you find is that, and we are in the equator. We have realized as Kenya we are in the equator. So we have actually a part of one of the highest solar hours in the country. But you can only get 7 hours. If you add battery storage, you'll get maybe another 1 hour. So that means that by the time we get what we call peak demand, you know the way demand in this country is, it is high in the morning, what we call morning peak, and then the peak hours of 2,543 megawatts, we are getting that at 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m. Now, around that time, we don't have solar. Solar begins, good solar power is from 8:39 in the morning, like right now. It will continue until 5 p.m. And at that point, the production, if you go to the National Control Center, you find solar almost becomes zero by the time you get to 6 p.m. So you have to use other sources of energy.
I want to come back to the power producers that you talk about, because we kind of glossed over these contracts, which have Kenya in a chokehold at the moment because of how that contracting was done. Now, independent power producers, who are they?
Well, independent power producers, these are private sector investors who have come to the Kenyan space.
Yes.
To invest, of course, provide a service and electricity to Kenya. So for that, that power is going to be used by Kenyans and manufacturers.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you know, we in 1997 is when now Kenya unbundled electricity. And unbundling meant that we introduced private sector players. So we had the first IPPs, Savo Power, that run by the Aga Khan services. That was the first IPP that was introduced. It has been retired in 2019. And of course, we have Imbera Africa, another 52 megawatts has also been retired. Those were the first IPPs. Normally, the reason why IPPs come in, because the government may not have all the money to build the infrastructure. And we have even seen now, we are leaning towards PPPs, the public-private partnerships, because you need the private capital to come in. But if the cost of if the environment of doing business is good, all over the private sector has been developing infrastructure. There is nothing wrong with that. Because
that's understood.
Yeah.
These two major ones that have been retired, that there are others that have come in, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what we are met with, unfortunately, is poor contracting, because Kenya is still locked in a situation where no matter whether you use the power that has been generated, you are paying for it.
Yeah.
And that cost is translated into what we pay in our tokens.
Okay.
So there's bad contracting that took place. Power is being produced. It's not being utilized, but Kenyans are paying for it anyway. So how can you be sure that going into so one way we can be sure about going into the future and hoping for lower electricity bills when we pay the token is that to ensure the contracting at the table is not as myopic as it was before. Is that not one surefire way of reducing the cost on the pockets of Kenyans?
Well, thank you, for that question. And I mean, that is a concern of many Kenyans. But what I can tell you is that it is not always what you hear. That is not always the right thing. What happens is that when it comes to contracting a power purchase, you know, an IPP to come, independent power producer, of course you have to look for value for money. The country has to ensure that they undertake viability, they look at financial viability of the project, also economic feasibility, and also technical issues. So the PPAs that have been signed, because most PPAs, the longest PPA is 25 years. The ones for diesel power plants, about 20 years. Wind, again, 20 years, solar, 20 years. Geothermal is 25, and also solar. Although hydropower can also be 25 years. Now, the issue of having unhealthy contracts, what I can say, that is not entirely true. Not true at all.
It's not true at all?
Not true at all. So
all the power that's being produced is being utilized in Kenya?
Yeah, you see, the reason is, and I give you an example. When you let's say, like, for example, I know capacity payments. When, for example, a thermal power plant, let's say we are talking about a diesel generator, for example. We can talk about even that we have Triumph Power, we have Thika Power, we have Ibera Africa, we have Rabai Power.
Yes.
We have 565 megawatts of thermal power in this country. And the PPA for these power plants, normally it has what we call capacity payment, okay? And then we have energy, and then we have there's a fuel component of it. So 3 parts. Why CapEx? And that is where the confusion comes in, when people say we are paying for something that we are not using. For example, I know most people, like you couldn't be a farmer. When you're a farmer and you are buying a tractor, a massive Ferguson tractor is about 4.5 million shillings, okay? Isn't it? When you buy that tractor, I want you to use that as an interpretation to understand the capacity payment. When you pay 4.5 million, you get your tractor. But you only use that tractor during the peak hours. During the rain season is when you are planting, during the long rains, before the long rains, and before the short rains. That is when planting happens. If the rains are not there, then you park. When there is no farming, you park the tractor. It couldn't be 50% of the time in the year. That tractor will just be parked there. There's less work. But then that means that the bank, if you have borrowed 4.5 million shillings from a bank, it means the bank will expect your payments every end of the month, isn't it?
But it also means that when I was looking at my land and I was buying this capacity tractor, then I would also realize that perhaps I didn't need this capacity, and then maybe I needed a lower or less capacity engine. No? Or maybe I could use oxen and a plow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking that, would you not see and say, well, the power needs are thus, and project. That's why you have actuaries who would then project and say it's possible that with population growth and infrastructure development going towards 2063, this is what we would need. And that's why I talk about myopic contracting, because don't all of those things come into consideration then when you say it's very possible that at some point during the year we would rest this power. So then why would it then come into the contracting if you know ahead of time that it is not going to be utilized? This is my question, and I would need to then be made clear on how that works exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So now, let's talk about the capacity payment and why it has to be paid.
Yeah.
Because that is what actually installed the CapEx. That is what enables you to actually get into EPC contract and install a power plant in Okaria or Lake Turkana. So the capacity payment when you look at the price of a diesel plant, for example, the capacity payment is about 5 shillings.
Okay.
So that one you'll always pay per kilowatt hour, whether the power plant is being utilized or not. Okay. And then there is energy of about 1 shilling per kilowatt hour. And then the fuel is about 18 shillings because the fuel is a pass-through. And that's why you find our PPAs, and even the way we actually do our tariffs, we adjust for fuel, we adjust for forex, and also WAMA levy, and also inflation adjustment. But basically, the reason why you need a diesel power plant, for example, we have 565 of them. And I want Kenyans to know that it's not necessarily those power plants are bad, they are good. Today, as we speak, demand of electricity, 15th of July this year, we have gotten another peak demand of 2,549 megawatts. Now you have 1,000 megawatts of geothermal, you have another 500 or 600 megawatts of hydro. And then Lake Turkana, we have another 300, and the Kipeto is 100 megawatts. So it means actually, even with all those other power plants, you are not able to meet the power demand. So you have to fire in the thermal power plants. Mostly those thermal power plants are usually like switched on in the morning for peaking. They are called peaking plants. So they are switched on in the morning, maybe about 2 hours or 3 hours. And again from 5 p.m. to about 10 p.m., again, they have to be fired because the demand always goes higher than during the normal day. Because during the day, demand is about 1,800. At night, it goes to 2,400, 2,500 megawatts right now. And that's where now you find these power plants has to come in. The only other alternative we have is to import more. And that's why you have seen sometimes we have imported power from Ethiopia, additional capacity, and also Uganda, in order to meet the peak demand. But otherwise, we do that. But again, also when you look at it, out of the 2,500 megawatts we are talking about peak demand, 93% of our power is renewable. So we only actually dispatch, like this past month, only 7% of power was actually dispatched from thermal power plants. So we ensure that we don't dispatch as much because so that we manage the fuel. Yeah. So you actually, we have what we call economic merit order. You dispatch the least cheapest technology or renewables, like all the wind or solar has to be dispatched. Then now you go to the other least expensive until you get the gas turbine in Moroni, which is the most expensive. Yeah.
I mean, we're taking a break.
We're taking a break right now. Let's take a quick one, and then we'll come back and look into some of these. I know you have a question about some of these things, and then what leads us back to what Kenyans need, because this makes sense on a certain level, but then we go back to what Kenyans would need for the all of this to make more sense. And of course, the fuel and energy question comes into play. We're talking with Dr. Mutua this morning, and we're looking at what it means in your token box. We'll be back after this.
This is the Start Your Day.
Incentives in Kenyans setting up solar powers in their houses and store that power, and in the event of excess, they can transfer that to the grid, and that comes a way of them getting to pay less at the end of the day whenever they're being charged. We are not seeing that happening in the country yet. We are busy importing, and still the contracts are a problem. Until when will we say that we're getting towards power purchasing agreements that make sense for Mwananchi? Because where Kenyans are, we are being chokehold because of bad contracts.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I think to set the record straight, we have a long-term PPA with Ethiopia for 200 megawatts. And then by the entire PPA is 400 megawatts. So by the end of December, we will be getting 400 megawatts from Ethiopia. And the price for that is 6.5 US cents per kilowatt hour. I think what was picked from the media the other day is when the MD of Kenya Power was signing an energy exchange in Ethiopia. That was totally different from the power purchase agreement. That is an energy exchange that is between KPLC and the Ethiopia utility. And what happens in Moyale and Sololo, we don't have the national network there. So what the government of Kenya, in the spirit of East African cooperation and East African community, and this is also had to do with the single electricity market that we are anticipating 2050 in Africa. Kenya and Ethiopia have agreed for Ethiopia to bring their distribution network into Moyale and Sololo. And that is where, because that price in Sololo, 15 US cents, is on distribution level supply from Ethiopia. So they have actually generated the power, they have transmitted and distributed it there at 15 US cents. What it means is that because the customers who are there are still metered by KPLC, they are paying the 19 shillings everybody else is paying. But the reason why that power is different from the one for PPA, 6.5 a PPA, 15 US cents for the one in Moyale and Sololo, is because there are different levels. One is a distribution, because KPLC rely 100% on the Ethiopian side to supply the homes in Moyale and Sololo. So I think I wanted to make that clarification.
Am I hearing you say that the distribution infrastructure in Moyale is being done by Ethiopia?
Up to the border. Because you are bringing that power at low voltage.
Yes.
Yeah. That is Ethiopian network. And then what has happened is that now from there, the Kenya Power now builds their whole network to distribute to their Kenyans. We have about 10,000 people who live around Moyale. So they are actually connected to the Ethiopian grid. And that power is now the one that is coming at 15 US cents. Otherwise, the 200 megawatts PPA, the 400 megawatt PPA is at 6.5. Yeah.
And even as we talk about that power that is coming in from Ethiopia, does it make economical sense for the country to import that from Ethiopia, because you look at, for example, a country like Uganda, one of our listeners is telling us that if you look at their sugar sector, sugar industries, their sole purpose is to produce energy. It comes to sugar as a byproduct, right? And that is what they are doing. We are also, correct me if I'm wrong, we're also importing electricity from Uganda because they have that they can supply to us. Yet we have IPRA, or the energy stakeholders in the country, we have all these sugar factories in Kenya that are going under. So as one would ask then, where we look at Kenya operating at a deficit, yet we have facilities that are able to produce energy, what is the role in having these discussions to revive these factories so that aside from farmers benefiting, we equally getting power at an affordable rate? Are these conversations that take place, or is it just about let's go for the easiest thing to do, which is to import power?
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. And I agree with you that the sugar factories, of course, their potential to generate electricity and export that power to the grid. And actually did, as we speak today, the number of sugar factories, we have maybe 6 factories or more. Most of them are a power plant installed, but they are using that power for their own use within the factory. Mumia Sugar, for example, in 2006, they signed a PPA with KPLC of about 26 megawatts. But then they were not able to sustain that supply because they ran out of bagasse. Because the bagasse is the waste that comes from the sugar for when you are milling sugar. So that is a bagasse that you now use to burn it and you generate electricity. And I like the reforms that are already taking place in the sugar belt today. And the government is very focused on importing less of sugar. But then you manufacture, you plant sugar cane, because without the sugar cane, there is no bagasse. So as we talk now, we have also been we have been talking with the Minister of Agriculture as we speak, the National Treasury, the Minister of Energy and other stakeholders, so that we can be able to actually benefit from the excess that is going to be produced by these sugar factories. Because as I said, at the moment, there is a PPA that even Mumia Sugar could not meet because they could not get enough bagasse that could be converted to electricity. But when you look at our least cost power development plan, when you look at we are planning for 20 years, already we have factored in about 200 to 300 megawatts that we know can come from the sugar factories. If, for example, the industries are sustained, they are more profitable, they can make money. And we have within the feed-in tariffs, actually, we have a special tariff that we have actually allocated for the bagasse. Yeah, so that you are selling with a certain incentive, because then the power is also renewable. And then there's something that you mentioned that is important, that you talked about the solar in the homes and whether we can be able to benefit. As we speak, as a regulator, we have actually introduced the net metering regulations. And it means if you have a home and you have installed solar panels, you can be able to export that power to the national grid. And either you bank your energy in the grid by way of reducing your bills, or you can also get a check out of it. It happens in other countries in Europe. But I think the future of electricity, whether we are looking at the bagasse or the exports and the imports from Ethiopia, because we also are exporting again to Tanzania as well, is about connectivity. The entire Europe, when you look at the Nordic countries, the Norway, the Denmark, almost the entire Europe has power pools. And all countries are interconnected. Even when you look at a country like the US, you find the West Coast states, or the West Coast, East Coast, they also have power pools. Within East Africa, we are also going to be having a power pool. And we have actually advanced. As we speak, actually this week, there's a meeting taking place in Nairobi this week with the Independent Regulatory Board that is for the countries within the East African power pool. And we are anticipating that the market is going to be launched. The market is going to be operated in Ethiopia. The market operator is going to be in Egypt. The Secretariat of EAPP is in Addis. The regulator sits in Uganda, and the settlement bank is KCB here in Kenya. So we are anticipating once that market goes live, then we are going to see sharing of resources, competition in the way we are going to be pricing electricity, whether it is maybe 1 year ahead, 1-year contracts, 2-year contract, 5-year contract, or even what we call day-ahead market, whereby you can actually pay for electricity that you use tomorrow, and you actually say, I'm going to use electricity for tomorrow, so I want a price for tomorrow.
The interesting thing about some of these other economies that you reference is that there is more than one company that's involved. And so you have very many people competing for your money in terms of providing you with power. In Kenya, you have one, KPLC. Could that contribute to the problem, whereby if perhaps you opened up the door to allow other providers to come in, what you do is then you invite price competition, and that will force people to either lower their prices in order to remain relevant in the market. But today, you don't have a choice. You want to put the lights on, you're going through KPLC. You don't have a choice. Would this affect the price if you had more people playing? And I'm not talking about from a regulatory point of view or from a power provider or producer, or rather from a power producer point of view. I'm talking about a provider. So you take what you get. You don't have an option. And so when we look at what affects the pocket, it's because on the buffet where it says we have a variety of servings, you only have meat. So it's either you take meat or you take meat. But if you had other people offering you lower tariffs, a bandwidth or a bundle whereby you had power, increasing and decreasing as per when you use it, perhaps it would lessen the pain. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and that is a very good observation. And as we speak today, we have actually the month of May, quietly a lot happened. The Cabinet Secretary actually gazetted the electricity market, bulk supply, and open access regulation into law, meaning that we are going to transition from the single buyer model that we do have, where Kenya Power has been buying all the power from IPPs, and there has been what the customers see where they are paying bills, KPLC. But I think that is not the case anymore. But even as we speak, I want also to say that Two Rivers, for example, Two Rivers Mall, we have a company called Athena's Power that is licensed by HEPRA that reticulates and actually distributes electricity within Two Rivers. All the hotels you see, Two Rivers, or the malls, they are not actually supplied by KPLC. It is actually Athena's Power owned by Two Rivers. Again, Tatu City. Tatu City is I think, almost 30 kilometers from here. Tatu Power is actually licensed by HEPRA to distribute power within Tatu City. There is no KPLC there. Yes, they buy power at KPLC at 66 kV, but also they have their own solar plant there. But the future is competition, and I do agree with what Ndu has said, that we need more option in this country, and that is the essence of the electricity market regulation that we are now implementing, because we are going to actually introduce competition. And I think if you have been looking at the media, you have seen the Minister of Energy has set out transaction advisory to actually undertake the first competitive procurement for solar and battery storage, because you want to test the market with that pilot. Then what will happen is that whenever you are planning for 20 years and you want to introduce, you want actually to have 1,000 megawatts from the market, maybe 200 megawatts from geothermal, another 300 megawatts from wind, you go to the market and you get a competitive price. So that is what is going to happen. Now within distribution, KPLC is no longer going to be the sole distributor. As I said, we have pockets of small, even Sarit Sender, Sarit Mall, they actually distribute their own power. Great Wall, on Mombasa Road, they distribute their own power. Even Lab Trust, they have Freedom Heights in Langata. They have their own power that they actually buy from KPLC and distribute and meter. The tokens we are talking about, they actually meter their own customers. But the good thing is that with the electricity market regulation, we are formalizing the market. Right now, even as we speak, we have 630 megawatts of captive power that have been licensed by HEPRA, not supplied by KPLC, generated and sold to a factory by other companies, private companies that are doing that. And the prices they are giving discounts of 40% what KPLC has. And I think that has been the beginning of competition. But now going forward, what we are seeing, and borrowing even from what has happened in Egypt had one utility, generating, transmitting, and distributing. What they have done, they now have about 6 distribution companies. I cannot rule out in Kenya that we are not going to have either KPLC, because like for Egypt, what they did, they actually split. So they have this old incumbent called the Egyptian Power, but it owns those distribution companies. But then they are able to compete for the same kilowatts, just like anybody else. And I think in Kenya, what we are doing now with that legislation in place is to actually now see electricity market being introduced. And then also we are opening up the transmission systems such that any person who is willing to generate power, they can use the transmission system. It's just like the expressway. When you want to use the expressway from Mololongo to Westlands, and you have to pay. So when you are joining the expressway, you pay, and you use it as you exit in Westlands. The same way, if you want to use the system, you can buy power from even a carrier, from Kengen or even from IPPs, and you actually pay for that, get that power at your factory, but and use the system, use the transmission system, and you pay what we call a wheeling charge. So even we'll be able to compute like what will be the average cost of using a transmission line in Kenya, or even a distribution line. But there are conditions. If you are going to be wheeling your power from through the transmission system, you have to actually utilize, you have to actually show that you can use more than 10 MVS, like 10 megawatts for the transmission system, and 1 MVA for the distribution system. So we are working towards a power market. I think from the leadership, we have seen Kenya wants to be like Singapore. I saw yesterday a report also that has been produced that we want to be a first world. In Singapore, the electricity market operator is the stock exchange. Is the Singapore Stock Exchange is the one that actually matches demand and supply, and it works perfectly. And we are seeing like in Kenya, we are going to have a market operator who will be different from KPLC. And their work is to match demand and supply. And then you remove all these conflicts of interest. And then also what happened is that the market will be more competitive. And many other people, because I'm very happy right now as we speak in Kenya, we have actually sort of made some of the utilities as government-owned enterprise. So they will become more commercial in nature, in the way they look, the way they are governed, transparency and all that. And that will be able to improve their investment outlook and even get more investors who may want to put money in. And also the infrastructure fund, for example, the National Infrastructure Fund. That is going to be another big change for us. The reason why Ethiopia has been doing big plans, because they have the Ethiopian Holding Company, which operates like the National Infrastructure Fund. And that is the fund that invests in big generation projects. And even our fund, if it is utilized actually to build big dams, build big geothermal power plants, then actually we'll be leveraging on a cheaper power in the future.
I mean, at the center of it all, if you look at an economy that invites investors in to set up manufacturing, at the core of it is power availability and cost of it, because everybody else will talk about cost of doing business, a good environment for doing business, but if you don't have enough power, and even power that is available is expensive and costly, no one wants to invest. So from where you sit as EPRA then, with all these concerns that do exist, there ought to be conversations around incentivizing companies that are setting up in the country to provide this power, as well as having conversations around the cost of electricity for us to say the economy is moving forward. From where it is you sit and the cost of power, is it a concern that is stopping the economy from moving forward at the pace at which it ought to?
Thank you, Dennis. And yes, that is a major concern, and that's a very good question. When you look at the manufacturing sector in Kenya, we are maybe 7-8% of the GDP. But we want to take it to about 15% of the GDP. And in order to do that, then you need to actually reduce the cost of electricity. So what we have done, even with the current tariffs that we have what we call time of use tariff. So we know that during the night, when almost the domestics goes to sleep, the industries, most of them operate 24 hours. But we do believe that we have geothermal power, we have wind power, and also we do have hydropower during the night that can actually be utilized by industries and actually increase their production. And that's why we actually introduce a time of use tariff, whereby like when you're consuming those extra units during the night, then you benefit from a 50% reduction. But it came with some conditions, which the conditions we have been actually discussed with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the National Treasury, and the Ministry of Energy. And actually beginning this month of August, we are going to actually effect by removing some of those thresholds that were very constraining. So that if you are consuming units at night, then you are going to be actually charged at 50%. And that is being done actually to encourage manufacturers. And so that then if you are consuming from 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning, then you benefit from a 50% reduction on your energy charge rate. And that will go a long way actually to introduce tariffs. And to actually lower the tariffs, the overall tariff the manufacturers are paying. And this works for when you have smart meters, for example, because we have a meter that reads what we call I rate and raw rate. Because initially we had like small commercials, like the small industry that their meter was not smart. It could not actually differentiate between the I rate and raw rate. And some of them were not benefiting. But I think Kenya Power right now, they have done a proactive expansion of having more smart meters. And almost all the industries now, almost the 4,000 industries we have, they are now on smart meters, as well as small commercial. They're also working to ensure they have smart meters. But I think going forward, this is just a stand measure, because KPLC pulled out the tariff application they had made, which was supposed to be effected in July 1st. So meaning we are now still on the tariff that it was applicable in the month of June. We cannot change it until they submit again and we go out to the stakeholders, for example. But what I can say is that the future is very bright. With now the power market regulations in place, having even we have also other special tariffs, like special economic zone tariffs for 10 shillings. And also EVs. We're also having electric mobility. The number of vehicles in Kenya, actually, in the last 3 years, we have seen an increase of almost 40,000 vehicles. And the consumption of electricity actually has increased from almost 1 gigawatt hour to about 10 gigawatt hours. We are talking about 10 million kilowatt hours that now are going to EVs. The reason why EVs are consuming more electricity, the buses you are seeing. And worldwide, public transport is usually driven by electric mobility, using electricity. And so we are designing tariffs that are going to be powering transportation, powering industries, SMEs, but also the most important is having a market where other instruments, as I said, it's good to joke about Singapore because that is where we want to go. Singapore, they have so many instruments where banks actually provide specific interest, specific concessional loans to companies that are investing in the sector. And you'll be seeing even in our country anytime from now as we move by. Yeah.
With all of these things taken into consideration, can we say that it's very possible that moving forward into the future, we will actually see lower costs of electricity?
Definitely, yes. The cost of electricity going into the future, even going into the next month, what you see next month, the forex adjustment will come down because I explained the shock that that happened because of the high volumes of transaction that was done in June for units built in July. But going forward, we are going to see a reduction. And again, also because as we embrace more competition in generation, we are going to be signing solar PPAs, not at 12 US cents, but some at 7, at 6, as we embrace the market. And again, also, this power we are importing from our neighbors. Once we have the East African Power Pool in place, our companies, our utilities will be able even to purchase at the most competitive price. Because
this is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.